It's hard to believe it, but we've reached episode 150 of Don't Talk TV. So for today's episode, I'd like to take a bit of a break from education on the law and get a little bit more philosophical, as I've done from time to time, especially harkening back to episode 84, and I'll be expanding on some of the themes that I spoke about in that episode today. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So I felt, given the milestone of episode 150, I wanted to get a bit into some of the underlying philosophy or principles that inform my views of the law, and I think inform why the law is going the way it is, and how we might get it to a way that we want it to be. A recurring theme on Don't Talk TV, unfortunately, I think has been that the laws in Canada aren't going in a direction that a lot of people like, and Canada itself isn't going in a great direction. And that's not surprising because, as I often quote from Mark Stein, politics are downstream of culture. So if the politics are bad, it's because the culture was bad first. And if the law is bad, it's because the politics were bad, and again, going back to culture. Now, I was reminded of these issues by a video put out by Matt Walsh that a bunch of people shared several weeks ago. It was very popular. Let me just play a very short clip of it here.
You say that we can't win hearts and minds by being nice. Because, by the way, I'm not saying that we're only preaching to the choir. That's not it. We also do want to convince people. But guess what? You don't convince people by being nice. You don't. At least not on a cultural level. I mean, where did you get this idea? Where did you arrive at this conclusion? That the way to win the culture is by being nice. Is that how the left won the culture? Have you been paying attention at all?
Now, Mr. Walsh isn't wrong. I think he's completely right when he says that truth is paramount and truth must trump being polite, and it certainly must trump people's feelings. The truth is independent of people's feelings. We have to speak the truth. Now, that said, I think it can be balanced, and we can speak truth in a way without being purposely offensive when we can. Sometimes that's unavoidable. But I also think that being angry and aggressive, while in certain situations may be very justifiable, and in the way our society is, I can certainly see why a lot of people would be tempted towards anger, and in many circumstances, not being angry would be an injustice and a wrong thing. Being angry and aggressive is less than 1% of how we win. Or to put it another way, Mr. Walsh argues that the reason we've lost the culture war, we're losing the culture war, is because we're not angry and aggressive enough. I respectfully disagree. That has very, very, very little, in my view, to why we've been completely annihilated and obliterated in the culture war. And I say that advisedly. We're not just losing, we're being annihilated. We are losing at every turn, and that's why Canada is unrecognizable to people like me who grew up in the 80s, and it's probably even more unrecognizable to people who grew up in the country earlier. So let me give you my thoughts on why we're losing, that are unrelated to being angry or not angry. And as we look at why why these are things causing us to lose, you can easily see how if we stop doing that, things will change. And I think they could change very quickly and a lot more easily than we'd think, although these things take work. So number one, first and foremost, in my view, is the fact that for generations, we've been contracepting ourselves out of existence. In earlier times, people called this race suicide, and I think it's a perfectly accurate and acceptable term, race suicide by contraception. The left doesn't reproduce by having children, because some might argue, well, the left doesn't have children either, but they don't need to have as many children because they reproduce through the government-run brainwashing centers, also known as public schools. So that segues into the next point. by partaking of those schools and willfully handing our children over to them for indoctrination rather than teaching them ourselves, that's a second reason why we're being annihilated, because we all know who runs the schools. We all know what the curriculum is. You see on social media all the time, every day, there's another outrage, another thing that people are upset about that's being taught in government schools. Well, no one's forcing us in Canada to send our children to those schools. This isn't Germany where you can go to jail for not sending your child to a government school. So we've been willfully doing that, and that is a huge, huge reason why we're losing. Not because we're not angry enough, but because we're willfully and passively handing our children over. And next week, I'll give some... I'm going to do a video about the law and some resources to help with homeschooling, but homeschooling, in my view, is a key to turning things around. And as a part of that, I would also say that by buying into feminism and divorce, and especially wives and mothers working outside the home, that is another massive factor in why we've been obliterated in the culture war. Because young children need their parents, they especially need their mothers. And I know this is very politically incorrect to say, very unfashionable to say in 2023, but I strongly believe that the reason I focus on mothers staying at the home is because generally, in the vast majority of cases, women are just much better at raising children, at nurturing children, at being loving and caring. And that's just the way God made us. And I don't see this as disparaging whatsoever. In fact, raising children is the most important job in society. So that is a huge honor, also a huge duty, but it's a huge honor, and it speaks to the great capabilities and skills and abilities of women that God has ordained them to be the primary nurturers and raisers of children. Obviously, they need dad in the picture as well, but men are more suited to that protector and provider role, but absolutely they need to be there too. That's why I alluded to us buying into divorce and men not focusing on their family and going off indulging in sports ball too much, or hanging out with the buddies, drinking beers, rather than focusing on the home. So that, again, now I've segued into another point. By allowing ourselves, accepting the distraction, the bread and circuses of sports ball, that's another way that we are defeating ourselves. And if we stop doing that, we'll start winning. And that ties into what I raised in episode 84. Of course, I did speak about homeschooling that episode, but also disconnecting from mainstream media by willingly putting the telescreens into our homes. Again, this isn't 1984 where the telescreen is put into your home by force and you have no choice. We have the choice. And we collectively have chosen to have the telescreens and the poison of mainstream media in our homes. So if we get rid of that, that's another huge piece. Of course, I leave the most important for last. And that is, again, what I alluded to in episode 84, getting back to God. And I focus on prayer, fasting, and penance. They're things that none of us do enough and that we should all be focusing on. And if we do much more of that, that is going to accomplish way more than being angry and aggressive. Any one of the points I've mentioned will accomplish geometrically more than being angry and aggressive. If you do all of them, it could be huge. It's a lot of work. I don't deny that, but it's very worthy work. Some people say to me when things are so bad, well, I'm not going to give up the fight. When I say, well, what's the point of being angry? Well, I'm not going to give up the fight. You want to fight? This is fighting. Having children, raising them, keeping the family together, praying, doing penance, the hard work of homeschooling and raising children in a wholesome family, that is fighting. And in my view, if even only 2% of the Canadian population did these things, it would have a huge, huge impact, because most people are followers and you only need a small dedicated core. And if you raise your children along the ways I've described, we could have a whole new generation of leaders who could blow out of the water everyone from the left, all the cancel culture people, all the alphabet people, and those that we're concerned about that are damaging our society. So those are my views, and they underpin why I do what I do. And I think that they'd be highly effective, and again, much more effective than being angry and rude. You could be completely polite, Taylor's side, and you do these things, you'll be absolutely massacring what they have planned for our society. So this video, of course, is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, call a lawyer. You can call another lawyer or myself. My phone number and website are listed below. If there's topics you'd like to see me cover on the show, please feel free to send an email to the email address listed below or leave a comment in the comment section. And if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.